This is Parenting Today on Lagos Talks 91.3.
All right, good afternoon. Exactly 32 minutes past 12. Welcome back. It is still your favorite show with your favorite ladies. But first off, it is the midday show. My name is Paula China. This remains your home of conversations, information, and of course, entertainment. It's all right here on Lagos Talks 91.3. We're going to be starting off with parenting today, where we take a look at the things we can do and the things we ought not to do as regards becoming the best version of parents that we ought to be. Now, when it comes to parenting, it's quite tricky. And the truth is, some people will rather, go along with the old ways. However, times have changed. You need to learn and unlearn certain things. Parenting, I'm no expert, but thankfully, I'm joined by my co-host, though virtually, but she's here to help out. She is the CEO of LagosMums, as well as a parenting expert, someone who never stops at trying to find out how we can just hack all of this parenting issue. Joanna, help me welcome Miss Yetty Williams, who's joining virtually. Hi, Miss Yetty. Good morning, or rather good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Paula. How are you?
I'm not too fine. I feel like I'm a bit down. So I have this headache that's like really, it's just been there since like last night. It's just very painful, but I'm good. I'm good.
Sorry to hear that. I thought so that your voice sounded a little bit, not quite as.
Yeah, I know. Everyone's been asking, are you all right? But I'll be fine. Now, Miss Yetty, I'm looking forward to speaking about this, today's topic, which is how technology can help support or hinder children on the autistic spectrum. And the truth is, I'm always fascinated when it comes to solutions preferred for persons who might have, cases of autism, and the caretakers in the form of parents is usually it's one ailment that sees whoever's caring for a child with this, overwhelmed and overworked. But it's always good to learn. I have an aunt who has a son who has autism, my best friend's brother too as well. And I just remember, my aunt and her mom, my friend's mom, even though she's not Nigerian, but just seeing her overwhelmed and trying to find out what's wrong with a child who's, who can't communicate but wants something done. You can just be left flushed. Now, when it comes to technology, I'm fascinated because I know that certain things can trigger episodes, for lack of a better word. I don't want to use the word tantrum. So these are like autism episodes in kids. I know that when it comes to technology, we're talking about devices, we're talking about, technological assistance. But in the case of devices, I'm particularly curious to know, if this is a case of, hindrance or supports, because when these children use certain devices, we know that lights and different things could be triggers, and, it might just see them act out. But I want to hear from you firsthand. I'll leave that to later. Let's just start with, maybe you telling us if indeed it is more of a blessing than a curse, or vice versa.
Right. So this month is, Autism Awareness Month in general. And yeah, I also wanted to just start by kind of defining what it means, what autism actually is, so that we get a sense of where we're coming from, and then we can start talking about specifically today. The conversation I want us to highlight is, the role technology plays. There is some hindrance, definitely, and there's some behaviors that make excessive use of technology, screen time, devices, all of those video games, why children who are on the spectrum are more susceptible to the negative effects of it. So that's really where we'll also focus. But autism, in general, is a spectrum, right? So
I know that.
It's a spectrum from mild to severe. And so a child being autistic doesn't necessarily mean that they present the same way. It's going to be many different things, right? But some of the general challenges is that there are challenges around social communication, language, behavior, and social interactions. So difficulty with verbal and non-verbal communication, being able to read body language. They have more difficulty interacting with others. Some of them will have quite repetitive and restricted interests, like certain things they like doing or don't like doing, or certain things they like eating or not like eating. So it's quite broad. And I think we're starting to get them more and more as a continent, as a country, is that diagnosing where a child falls on the spectrum really needs a lot of specialists to be involved in that. You know, psychologists, child psychiatrists, pediatricians, they need to evaluate quite a few things to understand where that child really does fall in terms of what their challenges are. It's only when they really know where the child falls, they can start to identify what do they need to change to help manage, you know, that child's challenges so that they're able to function better based on what challenges they have. So unfortunately, currently, it's not something that can be healed, but it is something that can really be managed so that whatever that child is manifesting with, parents recognize, caregivers recognize, educationists know what's going on with that child. And in the Nigerian context, it's very important that parents who might have a child on the spectrum, number one, know that they have a child on the spectrum, and they are very careful who they bring into their space to help. What I mean by this is there are certain families who have children on the spectrum, but they will just hire a nanny and expect that that nanny is able to manage this child on the spectrum. Unfortunately, quite a few of those children, sorry?
No, I was going to ask, you know, for parents who are overwhelmed, taking care of a child who might, have autism might also be costly. So these parents might have to go to work and they need some form of caretaking. And that's why they might rely on a nanny.
So I'm not suggesting don't get a nanny. What I'm saying is if a child is on the spectrum and you are going to get a caregiver in your home, you must make sure this is somebody who is skilled, who is trained to handle a child on the spectrum. Too many children on the spectrum suffer because just anybody is hired. You know, a nanny whose job is just to clean, keep a child entertained while mom or dad are at work, pick them from school. That's a very different type of caregiver than one that needs to understand that this child is on the spectrum. These are the things the child needs to thrive. These are the things the child cannot do or cannot eat. So you must take some time to train that caregiver. So I think that was the focus I wanted to put on that you must make sure that the person you hire, either you hire them through a group that you know is training caregivers for children on the spectrum because they exist. Yeah, so don't just hire anybody and say, I've just gotten a nanny. Please, please, please make sure it's somebody who's equipped to handle a child on the spectrum.
All right. Thank you so much. Now, I like that you also mentioned the spectrum. Now, when it comes to the autistic spectrum disorder, there are so many parts. And I kid you not, I feel like today is just the first time I'm really understanding the spectrum. So I always thought the spectrum was, just one line, less, medium, and more. In terms of autism, the severity, but it encompasses, ADHD, anxiety, Tourette's, and OCD. Now, for some of these, on the spectrum, such as, ADHD or anxiety or depression, do you think technology would be of good to them? These are people that, if they're accessing certain platforms via, of course, different devices, due to technology, don't you think this might actually trigger something that it's more like a hindrance than a support system for them?
I think it's going back to, first of all, understanding if somebody is diagnosed with autism, usually there are some comorbidities, that's what it's called, that can be associated with that. So that means somebody might be on the spectrum, but then they might have a comorbid condition that could include, maybe they're more anxious, so they have anxiety, or they have OCD, or they have some intellectual disability, right? Or they have ADHD, or they have other mental health conditions such as depression and anxiety. So it's about first identifying where this person is on the spectrum. And then usually, because of all the specialists involved, they will be able to identify, does this child on the spectrum then have certain mobilities, right? Such as, is a child more susceptible to anxiety? Is a child more susceptible to, maybe emotional dysregulation? Sometimes children on the spectrum suffer a little bit from that. They can't really regulate their emotions as well. So imagine if you don't know that, and then you leave a child, for example, who's already more susceptible to having emotional outburst. You then leave them, for example, with a screen for hours on end, maybe watching violent video games, what do you think is going to happen? So it's about understanding what is this child most susceptible to first of all, because screen time, there's no argument about the fact that excessive screen time is negative for everybody, children and adults, period. There's no argument again about that. Excessive screen time, the type of content, the amount of time spent is negative for so many things, from anxiety to increased depression to inability to focus. So some people who just use it excessively are showing ADHD signs. And we don't, it's not necessarily that they have it, but they're spending so much time on screen times excessively that it is showing, or rather they are showing ADHD signs. They can't concentrate, you know, all of those things that come with ADHD. So if a child is already on the spectrum, do you understand? Do you see what I'm saying? Painting the picture. So if a child is already on the spectrum and then you then come and put the layer of the negative screen time on that child who's already on the spectrum, is like putting their issues on speed dial, like adding fire and kerosene to, do you understand, together and letting it get even worse. So you have to really understand that a child on the spectrum needs to be protected from screens even more than a neurotypical child. And unfortunately, because most people are dealing with, obviously the stress is a lot. So some parents and caregivers tend to do what? They tend to give children these same screens, thinking that at least it's calming them down. But while it might be calming them down, it's having a negative effect on their development. So it's double whammy. And it's back to why I said, if you're hiring staff, for example, mom and dad maybe have gone to work and the nanny at home, she or he is just tired and is like, well, at least I know that this child will be quiet if I give the child screens. That child could spend hours on screens, just consuming it passively. And research is showing that that is affecting the child's brain development. So it's a very tricky thing, because if it's not nipped or identified at the right stage, somebody would just say a child is autistic, but that autism might actually get worse because the conditions around the child is not helping the child to learn the skills they need to learn, to adapt, to have better communication skills, you know, emotional regulation and all of those that they need to actually thrive. So it's quite delicate.
All right. Thank you so much, Miss Yetty. I saw that someone was calling. So if you do not mind, let's also allow our listeners to join us on this one. For those who are listening, if you have questions, I see I have a message on WhatsApp. I'll be taking that shortly. But for those who want to join the conversation, please do so now. You might know a parent, or you might be one. You might know someone who has a member of their family that unfortunately might, you know, have autism. Now you're thinking, how can you manage this? Especially when it's a child, especially when they might not be able to communicate well. You want to know what to do. You want to be able to, you know, chip in and just contribute to making life easier for both parent and child. This one's for you. Please join the conversation. For those who want to call in, there are numbers you can call on. But for those who are on X, formerly known as Twitter, kindly send us a tweet at Lagos Talks 913 is our handle. Send us a tweet as regards this using the hashtag parenting today. If you want to join via WhatsApp, the 3-in-1, like I like to say, you can call, you can send a voice note. WhatsApp is very much back. Send a voice note, call, or a message. WhatsApp number 0809 234 5913. If you want to call the phone line, 0809 191 3913, 0809 234 5913, and the landline number 0201 515 1913. Someone here says, hello, this is Enoch. Mrs. Yetty, good afternoon. And Paula, please, is autism the same as ADHD or Down syndrome? I keep getting confused because I was kind of slow as a kid.
No, autism is not the same as ADHD or Down syndrome. They're very different conditions. Autism, however, when you're on the autistic spectrum, usually it comes with other other, conditions, which is where sometimes somebody who's autistic might also have ADHD or might also have OCD, do you see? But they are not the same thing at all.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We have another message here. It says, please, I'm a mom to an autistic boy who excels at art class. I'm thinking of gifting him a pad to draw on in June for his 13th birthday. Do you think it would be good, or should he keep using a paper and stationery as his dad suggests? Thank you. Adefoye from VGC.
The interesting thing with screen time is they've said that it's not just about the amount of screen time that a child has, it's about how, it's a term I recently came across called JME, it's called joint media engagement. So that means, how is the child being engaged with the screen with an adult in their life? Do you get that? So if a child is given screens and they are already maybe diagnosed on the autistic spectrum in this case, and you know that that child is going to be left to their devices by themselves, you might not want to do it unless you are sure that there's somebody in that child's life that is going to definitely be monitoring, making sure that the child is only using it for a certain amount of hours. When they finish, you take the device from them. If you know that level of supervision is not going to be easy to implement, my advice is please leave the child to continue to draw as he's drawing with pen and paper. You might want to extend it before you give that child their own device. Because over and over again, the challenges we face, and a lot of my clients I work with, the problem after you give the children the device, that's when the problem starts. Because then it becomes very difficult to monitor the way you should. It's very difficult.
Yetty, is it possible to configure a device in a way that it can cater to a child and help them to communicate and process their feelings? A child might have autism.
Right. So there are different things. So in terms of a device, so there are certain, we said, can tech support or hurt a child? Can it hinder or support? Now, there are certain ways that augmentative and alternative communications, it's called AAC, they are being introduced to children with, or people with autism. And it helps them with communication and things like that. But once again, it's not a smartphone. Do you know what I mean? You're not just giving them an iPad or giving them a smartphone. They are specifically designed technology to support a child who usually has been assessed and who's working with a team of specialists to say, based on what this child needs, these are the kind of therapeutic tools this child needs. And we see how technology can support that. So it's usually being created for the child versus giving a child a generic smartphone or a generic device and thinking that if I block certain things, the child is not going to navigate it. Usually these children nowadays are very, very smart. I'll give you a funny story that happened 2 days ago. I changed the Wi-Fi password on our Wi-Fi in the house.
Oh, really?
Because I wanted to get my son to do something.
Oh.
So when he woke up, I told him, I said, yes, his sister wasn't around. And I said, I've changed the Wi-Fi password this morning because I need you to do certain things. And I know and they're on holiday, of course. I said, once you get on your device, before I call you out, Wahala. So I've just changed it. He said, wow. Okay, what are the things you want me to do? So I told him, I said, Mom, just so you know that there's still ways to get access to the internet, even if you change the Wi-Fi. I said, really? He's like, yeah. And then I said, okay, can you tell me what? He said, why will I tell you so that you now know? So it's okay, this means I want to learn. But then he basically explained to me the way with the modem can still get access to the internet, even if the password has been changed. Can you imagine?
Hey, are you serious?
Yeah, but because we have that relationship, he could tell me, we laughed about, and I said, okay, fine. I'll change the password back, but go and do the things that I did.
African child will not be that honest. It's like, okay, do your worst. I'll find a way about it, but I'm not.
That's why I say this parenting style thing, we have to get it right. Because if you get it right, you and your children will be able to communicate on everything or most things. Like you said, you could just have Yimu that this one thinks that she has changed password, Abby. Do you know what I mean? But because we have that relationship, me too, I didn't say, what do you mean? I said, but yeah, now tell me. And I said, okay, fine. Yeah, sure, you shall do. You know what I mean? So it was a conversation. I changed the password back. Now I know that, hello, that's not quite an effective thing of saying I'm changing.
Yeah, but do you think that was good enough to get his attention, like for a minute? Like you have to.
Of course, he got his attention, and we discussed it, and then we now had a longer conversation. That okay, how do we do it where I don't have to get to this point of saying, do you understand? Then we had the conversation. Okay, fine, mom, and then he did what it is I wanted him to do, and it was really around cleaning and stuff. No child is going to love cleaning, right? But they have chores. But I wanted them to do a certain level above, and that was what he wasn't doing as quickly as I wanted. So I felt, okay, maybe if I change the password and he can't get online, he will show up downstairs earlier. That was really it.
I love that, Miss Yetty. I have 2 messages here for those who want to send messages on WhatsApp. You can also call or send a voice note. However, kindly keep it short. The number for WhatsApp is 0809 234 5913. Let's take a look here. It says, please, what does it mean if you're told your granddaughter is autistic but classified as gifted? She lives in Denmark and she turned 4 in January. Please tell me and send this to my son, Mr. Leonard from Aggo Palace Way.
Yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of people think that when somebody is on the autistic spectrum, it means that they have, challenges all around. Sometimes it just means that the child might be on the spectrum. Maybe they have challenges with social interaction, right? Or reading facial cues, or being able to interact with people in a social dynamic and situation. However, the child might still be very gifted, which means that child might have, artistic skills, or their math skills might be amazing. Their IQ might be high, but they're still on the spectrum. So that's why it's important to really diagnose what does it mean on that spectrum. Where are they? Some are nonverbal. Some are autistic and they're nonverbal. Some are autistic and they can speak fine. You wouldn't even know when you see them that there's anything going on in terms of them being on the spectrum. So some of them, when they are gifted, they have gifted in certain things. They can be so good at math. Go and do research. You'll be amazed at how many successful people in the world actually are on the spectrum. So it's not a diagnosis of this child cannot thrive. That is not it. The child can still thrive. It's just that you have to know where on the spectrum that child lies so that you can then do the things and give them the therapy and the interventions they need so that that unique child can thrive. So I like that question because it's important for people to know a child can be on the spectrum but can still be gifted.
Wow. Thank you so much, Miss Yetty. 0809 234 5913. Someone says here, please, in adults, would autism still be so bad? Like, would they have learning problems in their adult lives? My brother was born with autism and he's 16, but fails woefully at school. Anonymous from Mende, Maryland.
Yes, absolutely. Once again, a child who's been identified or diagnosed as autistic, if that child, for example, is not getting the kind of support he needs in school, education is going to be a challenge. Are they in a mainstream school that's teaching them like every other child, but maybe that child needs something different? Sometimes those children need something called learning support. Some of them need a little bit more time in certain subjects. Do you understand? So if a child, for example, has some academic challenges, or maybe they're taking content slower, they might need extra time. What's the word they have here? It's called accommodations. Exactly. A child like that, sometimes they will give them extra time, maybe in their English exams, because they know the child is struggling a little bit more. Do you understand? With language than others. In math, for example, that same child might thrive in math. Exactly. But maybe, so it's really understanding each child, because when that child is understood properly and given the level of support they need, usually the child will be fine, right? So that person that asked that question, if you want to connect with me, you can. We'll give all my details later, because it's so important each child is well understood so that they don't, because another thing is if a child is on the spectrum and not supported properly, what tends to happen if a child is failing in school all through? Their self-esteem is going to be gone.
True.
Their confidence is going to be gone. So even that thing that the child is good in, and all autistic people have something they are good in, that's the truth. That thing that they are good in, if it's not even identified and nurtured, then that child will just feel like I'm useless in all areas.
But
then
I
that's not accurate.
now, as an adult, would they be able to, you know, how they might be able to communicate better, especially if as kids, you know, they were supervised and they went through therapy and sessions. Do you think as adults, they're able to use these unique talents and communicate better, like kind of outgrow it, even if it's there, it's not as heightened as when they were young?
I don't want to use the language outgrow it. What they will do is the therapy that they get will give them a level of toolkits that they need to understand how to be more effective and properly manage whatever they are presenting with. So if, for example, a child is diagnosed with on the spectrum, and one of their challenges maybe is an inability to make eye contact, an inability to talk to people or make conversation, they would just rather be alone. Now, the therapy that person might need is to understand that we know that social interactions are difficult for you. However, to be a functioning member of society, you must interact with people, right? So it can be something called exposure bit by bit. Okay, you're going to go out for 5 minutes and you're going to pick one person that you make a conversation with, okay? That child does that. That child is encouraged to do that little by little. Imagine that child starts getting that kind of therapy intervention from 10 years old, 11 years old. At 16, for example, that teenager might be more comfortable, right? When they then maybe go to boarding school. They've learned the skills that, okay, I know it's not natural for me, but I've learned how to make conversation. And because I know it's not my natural strength, that child needs people around them to understand that maybe after 30 minutes at an event, that kind of child cannot do more than 30 minutes. Do you understand? So that child knows that, okay, I'm going to go out. Okay, I have to build myself up. I have to rest well because I know tomorrow I'm going to this event where I need to talk to people. Okay, I know how to talk to people, but after 30 minutes, I'm going to have to take a break. It's fine. That's intervention that helps that child thrive versus people just berating that child. What's wrong with you? Come on, go and talk to people. Jonathan, you haven't taught the child how to overcome
the anxiety of having to do that.
Exactly.
Wow, thank you so much. Someone here says, just to say, I love this show. In the beginning, I used to disagree with Miss Yetty not beating of kids, but now after listening to the show, I stopped being too hard on my children. But I'm just learning about this Austin thing now today. Well done, Julius from VI. So he called autism Austin.
Oh, I love that feedback. Yay, I'm doing a happy dance here when people say after listening for a while, they change their parenting style small. I'm like, hey, we're making progress.
You know how many kids you've saved beatings? You've saved so many lives. Oh my gosh. But Miss Yetty, thank you so much. I know that seeing people with autism, I always realized they were very, talented, but I would see the younger one, like my friend's younger brother, he was about age 4 to 6. I was in uni and he would just throw things and yell and cry for hours. And, you see his mom cry sometimes or just have to sing or rock him or something and like just keep saying a particular word till he's able to understand it, then I think he would now slip up. But Ms. Yetty, thank you so much. It seems like something that would always overwhelm, whoever is providing care for that person, for the person with autism. All in all, would you like to just leave us with something before we a summary for people, someone like who is this here, Julius from VI, who's calling it Austin or who's probably hearing about this for the first time? What would you tell us?
Absolutely. So the truth is that it is a challenging because the world is made for neurotypical people. It's very difficult for somebody who's neurodivergent to succeed in the world as it is. And what that basically means is neurotypical are people who are not on the spectrum or who don't have any, developmental delays or any other conditions like ADHD and all of that. So those are neurotypicals. The neurodivergent people are people who maybe are on the spectrum, who have ADHD and other type of challenges or conditions or disorders, however you want to call it. So it's really just about understanding that each person is different. And if you understand that, okay, some people are not going to meet certain milestones at the same age. Usually children on the spectrum, it is more obvious when when they're passing that 2-3 years old and certain things are not happening, they're not making right number of words. They're not able to make eye contact. They don't respond when they are called. There are certain cues that people start to say, what is going on? What we need to do. Sorry?
No. Someone has a question for you, and is actually as regards what you're saying. I don't know if you want us to just quickly, if you do not mind. Sorry to cut you short. So someone says, my son is 9 years old, but he finds it very difficult to read and is slow in writing, though he stammers. Is he autistic?
So stammering does not mean that child is autistic at all. There's something there with their language development. It'll be good to see a doctor to understand what's happened. I've come, and it's on my page on Instagram. I came across a gentleman he's Nigerian. He moved to the US as an adult, and that was where he got therapy to help him with stammering. Now you can't believe he's somebody that stammers because he has learned how to manage when he's talking. He gave a whole speech and he didn't stammer was because he has learned how to pause, how to think, and then before he speaks. So there's therapy for almost everything in this world. That's the beautiful thing with the age we live in now, is that everybody should never feel that they are alone. There's information out there, there's interventions out there, so make sure you look for it from quality sources. So I think what I was starting to wrap up with was just, even if your child has been diagnosed with autism on the spectrum, it is not the end of the world. I know it is more challenging, but that child can still thrive if they get the right support around them. And that's what you want to look for. And make sure you don't use screen times as a babysitter. Because what we are finding is those children on the spectrum, they're already more susceptible to certain things. So when they now are using screen time excessively, guess what happens? They are taking the negative side of excessive screen time even more, making their conditions worse.
Wow. Thank you so much, Miss Yetty. Really, really amazing and wise words. I keep thanking you. How would we have known all of these without you? Thank you for taking out the time and for what you do for humanity, especially those African kids you're saving from whoop. Thank you. It's always a pleasure. And I feel a lot better than, than I felt when the show started. Thanks for making me happy. Miss Yetty, for those who want to reach out to you after the show, so many people have questions, and I'm happy that we had engagement because it shows that so many people are aware of it, but I feel like there's still kind of a bit of a stigma about it or around it. Or maybe mystery, not stigma. So for those who want to reach out to you and probably gain more knowledge, how can they possibly do so?
Yes. Please reach out to me. There's several ways to do that. First of all is our website, LagosMums.com, that has a lot of resources for parents and caregivers raising children in today's day and age. And then on social media, we're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or X, at LagosMums. So either way, you can reach out to me, and especially for people that need to be signposted, that need to be sent to the right place to get the right diagnosis and support for maybe children that they are concerned about or children who are on the spectrum, I'm able to give you, credible connection so that you can make sure your child is being seen by the right set of professionals. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Yetty. Someone is, I don't know. Someone is asking, please, can you kindly ask her the difference between dyslexia and autism?
Oh, they're different. So they're different. They're different. So maybe what we need is a show where we try to break down some of this, what they call different types of disorder. So parents understand what they are because they're all very different. Dyslexia and autism, totally different. Not even in the same space.
I thought they were somewhat the same.
No.
Don't they have similar symptoms like traits?
Nope.
Okay. Wow.
Because I don't want to rush that answer and just start talking about it. Let's make maybe the next show can be just, maybe talking about some of the myths around all these different things. Because like somebody earlier talked about Down syndrome and autism. No connection. There's no connection with that.
Well, there are just some people believe like learning disabilities can be classified under one body.
At all.
It might be that body that, everyone thinks, any child with disabilities or learning disabilities or late development learning, they will just classify it as, an autistic child.
No, because dyslexia is a learning disorder that involves difficulty reading, right? That is specific. It's about reading. So
Oh.
that has nothing to do with autism. Some children might reading fine, but they can still be autistic, maybe because they have other type of, things on the spectrum, but they don't have dyslexia. So they're not connected.
Miss Yeti, I don't want to sound like I'm talking down in Nigeria, but I feel like in a case whereby kids might have dyslexia, which is learning disabilities, I feel like for someone who attended primary school in Nigeria, sometimes I wouldn't lie, as a child, thank God I didn't have any, learning disabilities. But the truth is there's so much tension and anxiety, I feel, in our classrooms for kids. So sometimes when we think like these kids might have learning issues here in Nigeria, you see that some of these kids, when they move overseas, like they thrive, they're okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we need to get there. We need to keep talking about it so that children are not labeled. That's the one thing that upsets me the most, when children are labeled. That one is dumb. That one is stupid. I hate those kind of language. Where does that come from? Sometimes it's so simple. The child can't see the board because nobody has spent the time to understand. The child cannot even see the board, so they can't learn. How will they take notes?
Some of them live in fear. They can't even ask teacher.
Yeah, they can't ask questions. They will beat them. So we need to just change this reactive labeling and giving up on people versus getting to a place of understanding what is going on. What is the challenge? When I understand the challenge a child is facing, I can then look for solution. But if you don't spend that time with empathy to understand, how will you help a child? Dyslexia, for example, has nothing to do with being an olodo. It's just how they process words. They confuse spellings, things like that. That has nothing to do with autism. So if a child who has dyslexia is not supported, then how are they going to learn? They will affect other areas as well. And that's usually where that self-esteem issue comes in, where the child just starts going downhill because they just feel like nobody understands me. I'm struggling, and maybe I just cannot be smart ever. And so they give up. And like you pointed out, sometimes they will now go to another country, Western world, that has more of these interventions built in. So they are trained and they can pick up immediately that this child is showing either some learning challenges or behavioral challenges. They will then spend some time going deep into it. When they identify what that child has, they then give the child a support system, including therapy, learning support. Technology can be used to help that child learn.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Miss Yeti. I'm sorry for the background noise. But thanks for everything. It's always amazing having you on the show. Thanks once again. Hopefully we have you this time. Same time next week, Miss Yeti. All right.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay. Have a nice day. Thank you. This is Parenting Today, where we get to talk about everything as regards parenting, what to do, what not to do, what to avoid, and what to implement. It's every Thursday from 12:30 up until 1 p.m. Now, 1 p.m. is that magical hour